A groundbreaking procedure to treat one of the major causes of sight loss. Doctors at Moorfields Eye Hospital are using human stem cells to treat age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. If successful, it could transform the lives of thousands of people every year in the UK. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh reports. Vladimir Putin says Russia would consider conducting airstrikes against Islamic State targets if approved by the United Nations. President Obama and the Russian leader met for 90 minutes and agreed on the need for a political solution in Syria, but failed to resolve their differences on the future of President Assad. Mr. Putin described the meeting in New York as surprisingly frank. Barbara Pletasher reports. British World War II veterans have been awarded France's highest military distinction, the Légion d'honneur, at a ceremony in London. They're being recognised for their role in the liberation of Europe. Many were just teenagers at the time and took part in the D-Day landings in June 1944. President Hollande has promised to recognise every survivor who helped liberate France. Our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale reports. Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Merseyside police have launched a manhunt after a police officer was killed after being hit by a stolen pickup truck in the early hours of this morning. He's been named as 34-year-old PC David Phillips, who was married with 2 young children. Police had been called to a burglary at an estate agent's in Birkenhead. PC Phillips was hit when he tried to stop the vehicle as a patrol car gave chase. Our correspondent Danny Savage has the latest. Islamic State militants in Syria have destroyed another part of the ancient city Palmyra. They've blown up a Roman arch which was almost 2,000 years old. So-called Islamic State seized the World Heritage Site in May. Since then, they've also reduced 2 famous temples to rubble. Our security correspondent Frank Gardner reports. Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. The Home Secretary has announced a major shake-up of the asylum system to reduce the numbers who wrongly claim asylum in Britain while ensuring that the most vulnerable refugees from around the world are allowed in. Speaking at the Conservative Party conference, Theresa May warned that high levels of immigration make it impossible to build a cohesive society. From Manchester, here's Carol Walker. Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. A 16-year-old schoolboy has died after being stabbed at school in Aberdeen. Officers were called to Cults Academy in the west of the city at about 1:30 this afternoon. Another pupil has been detained by police and is said to be helping officers with their inquiries. Well, our Scotland correspondent Fiona Stalker is at the scene for us now, and the boy has been named in the last few minutes. A man has been jailed in America for 23 years for shooting dead a British tourist, even though another man was convicted of her murder. This man, Robert Jones, was sent to prison for rape, robbery and the murder of Julie Stott, who was on holiday in New Orleans in 1992. But even though another man was later found guilty of her murder and linked to all the other crimes, Robert Jones is still behind bars. Even the judge at the time and police detectives believe he is innocent. The BBC's Aleem Maqbool has this exclusive report on what has been called one of America's worst racially inspired miscarriages of justice in decades. Good evening. A 16-year-old boy has died after he was stabbed at school in Aberdeen. The boy, named locally as Bailey Gwynn, was attacked at lunchtime at Cults Academy. The school's head teacher said the staff and pupils were all totally devastated. The police have detained a 16-year-old. They say they are treating the attack as a murder inquiry. Lorna Gordon is outside the school now. Lorna. The family of a British man threatened with flogging for breaking Saudi Arabia's strict anti-alcohol laws say they're over the moon after being told he'll be freed within a week. The Foreign Secretary, Philip Hammond, made the announcement during a visit to Saudi Arabia. Carl Andre has served time in jail since his arrest in August last year. Our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, reports from Riyadh. Scotland Yard says it's significantly reducing the number of officers investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann 8 years ago. At the height of the inquiry, 29 detectives were on the case. A team of 4 will now continue to work on the investigation full-time. The Metropolitan Police said there were still very definite lines of inquiry to pursue, as our Home Affairs correspondent June Kelly reports. Fraudsters are tricking thousands of bank customers into handing over large sums of money every year, and it's money that most people never get back. The RBS Group says 70% of its customers who fall victim to a scam are not reimbursed. Almost 5,000 RBS customers were tricked by various scams between January and September this year alone. On average, they lost £13,000 each. And RBS customers are not the only ones affected. The Financial Ombudsman says in general, banks are not responsible for the fraud, which is why customers often don't get a single penny back. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson reports. The suspended president of FIFA, Sepp Blatter, has revealed it was agreed that Russia would host the next World Cup even before the vote was taken. England was one of the countries that applied to host the tournament. The Football Association, which spent more than £20 million on the bid, said it would investigate. Our sports correspondent Richard Conway reports. David Cameron says he's strongly against the idea of Britain adopting looser ties with the EU in the way that Norway and Iceland have. Some Eurosceptics argue that the country's a good example of how the UK could leave the EU but stay in the single market. The Prime Minister has travelled to Iceland this afternoon, which has a similar deal to Norway, to discuss his plans to renegotiate Britain's EU membership.